Hello, everyone. Chandanni here. I am so proud of my next guest today. I'm so happy that she accepted my invitation to come on. Eleesha Jimenez, who I've had the privilege and honor of knowing for a number of years now. She's part of the Chandanni Scholarship Foundation alumni. She has come to India with us a couple of times because the first time she was accepted on the trip, and the second time she asked to come on the trip as an ambassador, and we graciously and luckily included her because she was so instrumental in making the new set of kids for our trip to India feel so comfortable and aware, and she was a real asset and gift to our trips that we've carried out for the last 5 years in India for our fund. I wanted to invite Eleesha today on our platform in this conversation series because as a woman, as a Black woman, a young student, a pre-med student at university, I wanted for you, Eleesha, to come on with me and have a conversation that is so timely and so important, and that we want to hear it from you guys, from the youth, from the kids on the streets, from the communities that are being persecuted and discriminated against, and places and people that are voicing with anger or with resentment or with passion or with purpose what is happening to the Black community in America and the community of marginalization that exists in America. So without me saying too much more, because, you know, I speak from my heart and I consider you one of my adopted children, like all the kids in the fund, in a weird way. I feel that, you know, what happens to you guys, because I know you personally, is directly affecting my life. So without getting into it any further, I would like for you to introduce who you are, where you're from, and what you're doing today, and we'll dive right in. Eleesha Jimenez.
Hello, everyone. I'm Eleesha Jimenez. I'm a New York City resident, and currently I'm a student at Xavier University. Hopefully, in the near future, I still will be. And today, I think we will be having a very important conversation about social issues in the Black community and how it affects the youth, and how I personally feel that everyone in my age group is kind of processing everything that's going on in the world today. So
tell me how old you are again.
I'm 19 years old.
And just to bring our conversation back to when we first met, and, you know, you were selected as one of the participants, one of the students to come to India with us. And I know that that experience for you was the first time out of the country. And I know that that experience touched you greatly. And without talking about that experience exclusively, because we're talking about a bigger picture here. We're talking about what's going on currently in our communities. I want you to reflect back on that first trip and tell us the things that really bothered you about what you noticed in India with regards to what was happening back home. Do you remember those moments?
Yeah, because I still can kind of picture it now, like as I sit back and think about what's going on today in my own home. I can see like the similarities that Indian people have to African Americans in America. And for me personally, I think it was the segregation that they had, where it's like the class system that they're built on. Because I remember talking to individuals at that particular time, the first time that I had went, and majority of them were saying that they were stuck unless they went to university or someone they knew had went to university for engineering. They weren't going anywhere. They were stuck where they were, basically worshiping people who maybe would never help them in a lifetime. And it just kind of broke my heart, because to see that they're treated so poorly by their own government, by their own nationality, by people that they see every day, none of them go out of their way to help them or fix the class system that they're based on in order for them to have a better life without discrimination, or to be called names just because of the way they look on the outside and not who they are on the inside. So I guess that really bothered me. Like seeing the change as we drove through the country to get to the ashram really bothered me personally, because you could see a huge city and see that nothing's wrong with it, but as you continue to go through it, you can see how broken that everything in the country is. So I guess I connected to that on all of my Indian trips. So
I remember we had a conversation about how one of the positive things about India and the people of India you experienced was how friendly they were and how helpful they were. And you were saying that you didn't feel like that at home in Brooklyn. Can you talk about growing up in Brooklyn briefly? Obviously, you've lived there your whole life. So just sort of a brief explanation of what it's been like for you growing up in Brooklyn in New York.
I mean, compared to Indians, I personally know that if you walk on the street just crying, streaming tears, or you're going through something in life, you're not going to get that touch on the shoulder that you get while in India. Even though I was only there for a week, people that maybe will never see me again in a lifetime were so nice to me, gracious, open arms, always asking me, how's my day? How's everything going? Always wanted to talk, have a conversation. And I guess in New York, you don't really you don't see that too much or too often, unless you're coming from another place to live in New York, or you're coming from another state to come live in the city. Like, you don't get that hospitality that you get in a third world country. So for me personally, to see that they have literally nothing but will still offer the back or the clothes on their back or the food out of their mouth to make sure that you have something else also, kind of made me see that Americans aren't as nice, I guess, as you could say, that we portray to other countries. So
what has it been like for you growing up in Brooklyn, going through high school, and how did you manage to get yourself into university, and why did you choose the university that you chose to apply for? I know that you have worked many jobs in your life since a very young age. I mean, you're still incredibly young, but I don't even know how old you were when you started earning money. But when I met you, you were talking about doing 2 jobs and taking care of things and going to school and getting straight A's. Tell me about how life gave you the fire to not quit. You're only 19 and you've accomplished so much, and you've been in an environment that hasn't been exactly easy. So can you talk about that, about what obstacles you faced throughout your journey up until high school and now off to college, and why you've gone to the college you've chosen, and what you're doing with your life and how that's happened for you?
Honestly, I think the only thing that really drives me right now and what has driven me throughout the years is the fact that I know that without money, I'm kind of nowhere. Like, if I don't put in the same effort into the world, I will not get anything back in return. And it's kind of like, I guess you could say karma, because I don't want negative energy to surround me. So I always try to think positive, regardless of the situation I am. Like, I'm a female. It's not like meant for me to go off to college, or it's not meant for me to want to pursue something that takes years and years of practice or years and years of dedication with no partying or no entertainment for my own personal growth as a young adult. I think for me, what really drives me is the fact that I know I'm shooting for something that I really want. And I knew that me going to a HBCU, whether if it's permanent or not permanent, it was something that I needed to see myself, to have that personal growth, to see where I want to continue in life, or if college is a way for me to go, or how else I can help the world without getting a degree, for say. And going to a HBCU, Xavier particularly, kind of really, I guess, awoke an experience in me that made me want to speak out more or to use my voice in order to be heard, because it's a lot of things that are going on that I've noticed going to a different state that I haven't really seen sitting in my own living room or going to work every day. I don't sit back and reflect on what's coming into my eyes. I just go about the day because it's like a normal. But now that I see it and I've been around people that look like me, and I've sat in discussion groups and really just thought everything through, it's kind of like, it's a lot of issues that don't get spoken about every day, and it bothers me.
So let's talk about that. Let's first talk about what an HBCU university is. I didn't even know what this was. I mean, I didn't grow up here, but I didn't know what that was, and you educated me yesterday. So tell us what an HBCU university is, how it developed, and then let's start talking about these topics that are on your mind and in your heart.
Well, to my understanding, when it was presented to me my senior year, HBCU is a historically Black university or college that is basically fully hearted around Black culture, and is to kind of like shelter, if you want to say, shelter Black educated individuals and give us a space to learn and to freely be ourselves without any judgment. And for most of my knowledge, HBCUs were kind of founded to keep, I guess, schools segregated, to keep African Americans safe during, I guess, I believe the 1700s when the first HBCU was founded, and really was to keep us from going to white schools, to give back to our community, to make sure that we were seen as humans, as somebody that could get an education, as someone who could be your next doctor, as someone who could be your next lawyer, basically to give us that, you know, that structure that we needed in order for us to be great. And coming from a school for just a short amount of time, I can see that how much work they put into making those schools great with so little funding that they do get from the states or from the government.
So in these HBCU colleges around the country, there's not that many of them. And like you said, there's limited funding, but they are primarily Black student universities, correct? So there's no other minorities or?
There are other minorities, but it's really, I guess you could say, it's a place for us to go when no one else will accept us. We know that we always have that back door to get us to where we want to go for more money, of course, usually, but there's always a place for us to go when we're not welcomed anywhere else. So that's how I see it.
So is that kind of normal for you to feel unwelcome and to find places where you feel like you can grow and move in the world?
I mean, not for me personally, but I do know individuals that won't go to college because they feel like if they go to college, they're going to get judged, not only because of who they are on the inside or what they personally think or what they were raised on, but I have some people that in high school didn't even think about college because it was never presented to them. It was never presented that there were HBCUs that they could go to, or there was a university that was smaller than a 4-year in the state that they could go to that would accept them for who they are. Like maybe they don't learn as fast as other individuals, or maybe they need that extra push from somebody else in authority to tell them that they can be something. And for me, honestly, coming from automotive, it really shows who you put your trust into and how much trust that students have in individuals that don't look like them. Like I had more trust in people that look exactly like me than people that didn't look like me, because that's just how I'm trained mentally to think as a Black individual. I'm just always trained to only trust the input from someone that looks like me, because you know how it feels to be in my skin. You know how hard it is to get something that you really want because of what we look like. So that's as much as I can say about that one.
No, it's so it's the populace is Black students at these universities, and also the faculty, correct? The
Yes.
teachers. Is that what you're saying?
Majority of the teachers are Black, but it's a mix of all of us, but it's just really a community for you to feel like safe in, if you want to say. It's like a safe haven. Because when I was there for the short time, I understood why a lot of people were trying to get into a HBCU but could never get there because they couldn't afford it. Like, the environment that you have at a HBCU is something that you can never get at a white institution or a college that you already knew that you could go to in your hometown, but it's not all Black. It's not all centered around Black culture. And to sit in an environment like that, whether I was involved or not, I felt that love regardless of if they talked to me or not. I always felt loved. I felt like I was in a community where I could really speak my mind. If I really needed to get something out, I could speak my mind freely without being judged or saying, I'm bringing race into it, or it's something else. Like, there's something else in your family that's going on that's making you feel this way, or have judgment towards something that I'm saying that I personally believe, because it's a community that all believes the same thing, that all wants the same changes to happen in the world. So
I think it's an interesting point you're bringing up, is because in the world up until now, with all the changes that have happened from slavery to discrimination of all colored people, all different cultures, there's always been this idea of not talking about racism to the other color or the other race, that if you talk about racism, it should be amongst your own people. Because if you start to talk about racism or bring up things to a white person or a different race from you, then it's always uncomfortable, and nobody really wants to talk about that. It's like you said, they make excuses like, oh, something's going on, you're angry, or something's going on in your family. And with the horrific murder of George Floyd, which is one of many that we know of, and more of many that we don't know of because nobody filmed it or reported it for us to know as a society, is that for the first time, white people, brown people, yellow people, red people, whatever race or ethnicity you're from, because of the internet and because of the technological era that we live in, like doing interviews like this and protesting and people seeing and engaging and reporting and talking, we have to face each other and talk about these uncomfortable issues that have been slid under the carpet for hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years all over the world. And now America, because it's a new country and it's imperfect, but it is a country made of so many different cultures, so many different colors, so many different backgrounds, that because of its new life has also the opportunity to create massive change, not only here in America, but the rest of the world. And we as a population of America, and you as the youth of America, have a lot going on in your lives right now. What do you feel is the most important thing for you today as a young Black woman to stand up for? What are these conversations that are happening at Xavier? What are these things that are triggering you and in getting you passionate about having your voice be heard?
That's a great question. And it's a lot, and I can't really dissect something that's very important, but I think the most important is the fact that someone that looks like me, a male, cannot go outside and not feel like he could not come home that night or can't see his mom the next morning is kind of like a big concern for people my age. Like, the fact that it's children still getting hanged, the fact that it's individuals that don't get to see their family the next day because they get incarcerated for maybe a piece of marijuana in their pocket, or they're always getting discriminated by cops or pulled over to the side of the road because they're a Black man driving a nice car, or you're too young to be owning something that looks like this, or you look like you're up to something, so let me stop you and have this conversation with you, because you may be on your way to murder someone, or you may be on your way to rob someone. The big issue is the fact that police feel like they have the right to stop a person of color just because they feel like they're on the way to commit a crime, when they're stopping and taking their time, 10 minutes of their time, to stop a Black person, when the person that looks just like them is on the way to do the crime that they should be on their way to look for. Like, you're stopping yourself to discriminate me because of past events, or because of your own prejudiced thoughts against my people. You want to target me instead of the real person that's doing the crime. I guess that's what really bothers people my age. And it bothers me most because I don't want to have kids or bear kids in this country knowing that my kids won't be as safe as someone else, or my family members won't make it home one day because of everything that's going on in the world. Regardless if it's not really going to happen, or you never know, it's chance. And God forbid something like that happens, there's nothing in the law protects us. It's basically where it gets down to. Like, we can be shot dead in the street and nothing will happen. We go to trial, like Trayvon Martin, don't get a verdict. He's free to walk, selling the gun that he shot this little boy with on eBay. That bothers and triggers people my age. Many of us don't know how to speak out on it, but it bothers us to know that the police can do whatever they want, and we do one little thing and we get prosecuted for it. We have to sit in a prison for it. We have to take a charge for it. We have to pay a fine for it. But the person that looks exactly like the police, nothing happens to them. They walk free.
So it's gotten to this place where it's so horrific that we're all speaking about it. But let's take it back to before knowing about these murders, before the murder of George Floyd, before all these heinous crimes happening in the name of justice. Let's take it back before those things. Let's talk about, did you feel unsafe before knowing those things from the police?
I've always felt unsafe. Like, it's just in the back of my head because I have family members that have lived through that difficult time, watching Martin Luther King get shot on live national TV, watching all of that happen. And for me personally, it's always bothered me how the world was. Like, people that say they don't see color, but will still follow a Black person around the store before they go follow a white person around the store. They will still look at a Black person like, oh, that's ghetto, that's ratchet, use all the disrespectful terms in the book to describe how we have fun before they go to describe how someone that looks exactly like them has fun. They'll use different terms. So the fact that I have to go to a university that's fit for my own personal skin color bothers me more than anything in the world. It bothers me that I have to segregate myself from the world because there's this piece of the world that's still racist, that still doesn't like Black people, that still doesn't want us to be something better, that still wants to hang us, that still wants us to work in the fields, that still doesn't want to see us be greater than what we can be, that doesn't look to us as humans. They look at us as monkeys, as individuals that don't matter, as people that don't deserve basic human rights, as people that need to rot in prison, as people that don't deserve a piece of property, that don't deserve a plot of land. We can't have a nice house in a nice neighborhood because how did we get it? Did we use drugs? Did we use, I don't know, did we steal it? Did we take it from someone? That bothers me as much as the next person. But the fact that they shot this man in cold blood, and it took for people to go in the streets and protest and riot for them to go put them in prison, that says a lot about America. That says a lot that other countries have to go and protest for our president to go sit and tell lies to our face. That says a lot about the greatest nation in the entire world.
when we were in India, you didn't feel like that. And I say that because it wasn't just you. It was, you know, my experience with Black Americans was limited. I grew up in England. It was different culture, has its own set of issues, but it's different in England for people of color, Black English people. It's different. And for me and for Chris, you know, taking you lot to India over the last 5 years, we're just learning about what you're going through and what you have to put up with and deal with. But I do remember that in India, it was sort of like the first time you didn't feel that way. You felt accepted. You felt accepted amongst a people that you didn't know anything about. And even when they were taking pictures of you and wanting to touch your hair, it wasn't offensive. It was a kind sort of attention. It was like they were intrigued by you, by your difference of them. It wasn't a hateful stare or a hateful look or a hateful, you know, point of view. Can you talk about that?
Honestly, I think wherever you go in the world, you get looked at for being different. But with India, it kind of felt like it wasn't them being prejudiced, because they feel that they get that from their own government. They get that from other places when they go. Like even in America, they get that prejudice sense that they get from other people when they see people wearing weaves that come from their heads. So for me, them stopping and wanted to take pictures of me or wanted to touch my hair was kind of like cultural acceptance. They were accepting that I was different from them, and they wanted to, like, they were intrigued. Like, I don't look like you, so I want to know how does it work in your city? How does it work in your town, or how does it work in your country, wherever I was from? So I didn't take that as hate like how I take it here, because I know the background story. For them, I don't know the background story. It may have been hateful, it may have been spiteful, but at the end of the day, I didn't get that energy, because it only took 3 days for me to feel like I was at home, compared to in America. I still don't feel like I'm at home. I still don't feel like this is where I'm supposed to be. I still don't feel like I'm loved as much as I was in India, because they didn't give me that hateful feel. And I really do feel like when you do walk around in a different country, you feel the energy that the individuals give off from you, just based on how they look at you, how they talk to you, how they respect you, how they worship the ground that you walk on the same way that you do for them. So for me, India was kind of like the real eye opener to what's going on in the world around third world countries. So India was like, I guess you could call the motherland, because I really felt comfortable. And if I could go anywhere in the world, I would go back to India, because I know they will accept me for me. If I needed, I don't know, a cup of sugar, they would give it to me with open arms and ask me to sit down for dinner and have a conversation with me and play with my kids with no no bad thoughts. So
what makes you want to become a doctor? I know you want to become a doctor. It can't just be the money. What is it about your young life, being who you are, growing up where you've grown up, that makes you so determined to become a doctor?
There's not many doctors that look like me. I don't see them every day. When I go to the doctor, I see majority Indians or Asians or Caucasian individuals. I don't see anybody that looks like me unless they're behind the desk taking my appointment down or making sure my insurance is in check. And for me to see other doctors do it successfully in different states, I want to be a part of that change. I want to be a part of that whole. I was the first female doctor to work here. I was the first Black doctor to work here, or I was the first Black individual to do this, perform the surgery. I want to be a part of that change. And while education is only one step, I just feel like if I can show people that Black individuals, Black females that come from poverty can do the same thing as someone that's white coming out of middle class and getting everything paid for them to go off to school, then I can do the same thing, and I can show you that we're capable of so much more than what you presume to be acceptable for us. I can do the same things that you can do, but it may take me 5 extra steps compared to your 3 steps that it took you to get into medical school. So
what do you have to say, you know, this whole concept of white privilege and white fragility, these are all sort of new terms for me anyway. I don't, maybe they've been around for a long time, but they've surfaced a lot now. And there's a lot of white people or, you know, non-ethnic people that feel that they've never been prejudiced to anyone. And especially in America, that everybody has the same chance, that everything's available for anyone to do what they want to do if they put in the work. What do you have to say about that?
It's not true. White privilege is real. The privilege that you have to walk in your skin that's not darker than pale is very real. And if you don't see it, you don't see where your skin color has gotten you or who your parents are and where that's gotten you in your life, then you need to sit down, pick up a book, go on Twitter, go on YouTube, watch the Oklahoma Tulsa documentary. You need to revisit history books because white privilege is very real. And if you're any other color but Black, you will make it somewhere. And that's just the true fact. If you don't have a so-called white name, you will not get a good job. If you don't have a so-called white name, you will not get into a good university. Even if you do so happen to get in that good university, what's the chances of you feeling comfortable at that university because your name doesn't match the face, or your voice doesn't match the face, or the way you act doesn't match the face? Everything changes once someone sees who you are behind a screen or behind a name. You may not think that the things that you do is not prejudice or you're just acting normal, but it's a lot of hidden messages between the way you act with someone. If the first person you would go to be your doctor for, say, was not a Black individual because you don't trust them, or you don't say certain things around different individuals, it shows that you have that back line. I guess you could say prejudice thoughts. Like, you don't see what you're doing, but sometimes people that say they don't see color, they have that wall built up already. They know what to say and what not to say and how to act and how not to act because they're already conditioned to do that naturally from birth. So while you may not think that you're doing something that's rude or disrespectful, or you're being very respectful, you're still building up that wall, that you still have those backline conditioned ways of life. Your parents think like that, so you act like that. So if you don't understand that your privilege to be white is real, then your eyes are not as open as you think they are.
It's interesting because, you know, for people that are aware, it's obvious. For people that are unaware, they may be innocent in their ignorance. So it's nice to give people like that a shot, like to communicate, to discuss, to educate, so that people that are ignorant to those things are not doing it, you know, maliciously. There are many white people in the world that are just good people that don't see color, but they need to be educated to see that color exists because they're white and they're not Black, or they're not colored. So the education factor, I think, is an important thing to stress in today's world. And secondly, I wanted to ask you, within the Black community, I don't even like to say African American, because not all Black Americans are from Africa. Some of them are from other places. So this whole idea of African American is sort of prejudice as well, I feel. But within the Black culture in America, in your experience, do you feel totally accepted? Let's talk about that. This is an important part of the conversation that many people don't know anything about.
Sometimes within your own community, you don't feel accepted because, you know, there are so-called cliques that you have. Like there's uh, the white blacks, like the Uncle Toms, or is different classes to being black, if you want to say. And that's just based on all blacks that get whitewashed throughout the years, for my own personal opinion, that they have this, like, I guess you say, class system of how black are you, because how white people look at us. So there's different levels to being black. And I just think that it shouldn't have to exist that way. We should be able to be our own person, regardless of our skin color. And coming from someone that's called white black because I speak proper or I carry myself a different way from someone in the black community, it bothers me that individuals that look like me have to think of me as such because of how America is, because how separated they create us. If you live in a nice apartment as a black individual, you must have got that on welfare, or somebody else is helping you get to where you are. That bothers me, because why can I have nice things and be black also? Mm. Why can I have nice things and be white middle class, if you want to say? There shouldn't be a class for each black person. We should just be our own people, but we can't have that, because when we go sit down for a job interview, we basically have to put on a face that our background, our culture, whatever we grew up in, doesn't exist. Because we have to meet to the terms of an employer or someone that's trying to get to know us, or people on the streets. We can't act a certain way or we're looked at as rowdy. We're a threat. We're rioting, or we're looking to fight something. Police get called because we're having fun outside of our home. Because we're too loud. It's too many in a group. They're scared.
This feeling that you have been brought up with is not normal. And I hope you never accept that as normal, which is why it's very refreshing to see people protest, even though protesting is not enough. It needs to be fixed on so many different levels, individually and collectively. But the fact that we are coming out together as Black Americans, as other ethnic minorities, as white Americans, to protest together is a very positive sign, because it's not normal. It cannot continue this way, and things must change. However, we need to be heard. We need to keep growing and moving and dealing with uncomfortable things. And a powerful woman like yourself at such a young age, you are the type of leaders that we need in our world today. And the world, in my perspective, from an Ayurvedic perspective, which is about an integrated state of wellness for an individual that is unique but part of the whole, is that we need many leaders. The idea of being the follower is from the last century, that every individual, whether they work for someone, whether they're a student, whether they run a company, whether they're a mother, a father, a sister, a brother, needs to rise up to the occasion of being a leader within that community. What are you doing in your life other than everything, working, going to school, pre-med, looking for an amazing future, standing up for your rights? What are you doing today that's the most important part of your leadership role in your young life?
I think, honestly, what's most important to me right now as a leader is really helping make sure that there's something here for my younger cousins and my nephew, to make sure that there's a world where he can be successful in without judgment. that's kind of my biggest concern right now, because I know one day I will not be here. And I don't want to leave this world knowing that my son, my nephew, my cousins will still have to put up the same fight that my generation had to, my grandmother's generation had to, my great-great-grandparents' generation had to. Like, that bothers me to my core, because no one should have to live like that. No one should have to constantly have to fight to be heard, or fight to have justice be brought for someone dying unwillfully, or for someone to be sitting in prison for 37 years before they get a trial, a retry for their trial. That shouldn't happen. And it shouldn't happen to people of color, because considering the fact that we've been in this country for over 400 years and helped build communities, build cities, created our own cities and had them destroyed, I don't want that for the future generation. So for me, just having this conversation, or for me just constantly sharing anything on social media, that's my step. That's my role. Or to educate someone that doesn't know as much as they think they know is my role. I can't do anything more than that because of where I'm at, the level I'm at in my life. But hopefully, with all the talking I do, or with all the conversations I bring up, or all the discussions I partake in, something can change. Me talking to the right people can put a bug in someone's ear and create a change. So for me, I hope that everything I'm doing now changes something, but we'll never see until we get a verdict. Before we get a verdict for George Floyd, or for all the other hundreds and thousands of kids that have been killed that never got to see a light of day, and the person that killed them is still walking the streets today. We'll never get change until all those people that killed unarmed Black individuals are in prison.
What's the most heartbreaking thing in your life right now? What is the thing that makes you so sad?
The saddest thing I seen today that really touched me was, I watched a video of a young kid playing in his driveway of his home, of his parents' home, and he hid as soon as he heard cop sirens. Hid behind a car, even though his parents had probably put the ear in his head that cops are bad, all cops are bad. It's still the idea that he has to hide, and then one day he's really going to need to hide because he's older or stronger. He looks bigger than a cop, and he's standing in a nice driveway. So that hurt me.
A lot of things have to change, and now I want you to, before we close this conversation, because we've said a lot of powerful things in a good amount of time, I want you to talk about your hope and your dream, and what are the things that make you happy today?
My hope and dream is that people that are uneducated, that come from all walks of life, that think nothing in this world, everything in this world is going okay, and they can't change anything because it's the government's, like, it's the government's job. I hope you educate yourself and see that Black people have really still been oppressed since slavery. We still haven't gotten those civil rights that you keep protesting to us. We haven't gotten the equal rights that we deserve. We haven't gotten any justice whatsoever from any of our old protests. We haven't gotten any of it. We're not able to sit outside our home without facing judgment. The older we get, the more oppressed we get, the more closed in we get. When do we see justice? When will our kids be able to just walk around and not have to worry about having a cell phone case that looks like a gun, or having our cell phone out, or reaching for something without thinking that we have a weapon? When will that ever happen? When will our government give us the justice that we deserve? When will the government do right by Black individuals?
When we become the change, sweetheart, when we do it, you lot have a lot on your shoulders, you young kids of today. You are the future. And even though the injustice exists today and has existed your whole life, you have a very bright future because you're going to define it that way. You're going to live it that way. You're going to make it that way. And you're going to find supporters like me and other people in your lives that are going to help you pave the way. Tell me something good now before we say goodbye. What's good with you today?
I don't really have anything good. I guess this conversation was good. It was good to be able to say something for individuals that are my age. I may not have gotten to say all of what people wanted to talk about, but I touched on topics that I hope it sparked something in someone's head to, hey, let me educate myself so I can show this to my parents, or I can show this to people that think they're not doing anything that's wrong. It sparks a conversation within themselves to get right or understand that they do have a privilege regardless of skin color, or to understand where we're coming from as people that have protested or the rioting or anything. You understand why people are so angry, why things are on fire, or why people are in the streets every night arguing with people back and forth or trying to change your view on the world, because we do matter. We make up almost 50% of the population, 64% of the population. We're a big part of America. We matter.
Yes, you do. Even if you're half of the 1%, you still matter as significantly as anybody else. All lives matter, but Black Lives Matter today. Power to the people. I love you so much. Do you want to say anything in closing?
No. I just
One last thing
goes out.
One last thing from a mouth of babes. One last thing to end it. What would you say to your next door neighbor today, other than the educate yourself part?
I love you regardless of your views, but you need to change and see what's going on in the world.
I would say the same thing. And I love you so much. Thank you for sharing this very, very precious time with me today. And I can't wait for us to come on and talk some more.
Same. I can't wait.